The lesson is in English, is that okay?
Yeah.
The lesson, this exchange, all right, is in English, all right. Can I ask you, how many of you work with children, elementary? Okay, so quite a few. And the rest of you are high school teachers? Okay, well, first of all, it's not Professoressa Romeo, it's Mary, all right? And I work in a linguistico as a conversation teacher, so I'm always working with my colleagues, all right? And a little story about PowerPoint presentations and why they're important. But for the elementary teachers, after I explain how they are structured, why to use them, why they are important to use in class, I'd just like to ask you, how many of you have a school with your classrooms with an interactive whiteboard? Just 2, 3, 4. Do you have it in all the classrooms, or do you have 1 or 2 for the school?
Yes.
Good, in all classrooms. And do you use them regularly? Okay. Do your students do PowerPoint presentations?
Yeah, I do.
They do, okay. Have you had the opportunity to give them the criteria of how you want them done? Okay, so that's already the good. So you will be checking if you're learning anything new at this point. Okay. Okay. All right. So the reason I started PowerPoint presentations was from personal experience. First of all, before the technology, when I was in high school in Canada, presenting group work was normal, everyday type of didactics in our schools. We learned very early, right from elementary, how to organize and work in groups. And we learned very early how to talk as individuals to a class. And more importantly, we learned very early how to listen as a class. And this is something that I find that's very difficult, and I don't know where it starts, where the class doesn't feel involved, because it happens also in my classes. One is presenting and the rest are I don't know why. And I know in middle school it's even worse. Okay? And this is one of the reasons why when I do presentations, I ask the class to evaluate their classmates. And I'll give you later something, an evaluation sheet. So the first thing about PowerPoint presentations, when you keep in mind, is that you're speaking to an audience, okay? So there are a lot of things involved apart from the content of the presentation. The reason we do PowerPoint presentations is to inform, to sell, or to motivate. These are the three. Obviously, you can understand the selling part for business and how it's important, and why schools, right from middle school on to university, they use PowerPoint presentations to do that. To give you an idea, I have students who, with the Erasmus projects at university, find themselves going from Italy to the UK, and bam, they're in class in front of their classmates in English, doing a presentation with no idea how, and it's evaluated, because it's not only the final exam. Your course, your credit course is structured that you might have 20% your exam, 15% a presentation, another 24 research paper. So that presentation is important. I have currently 2 kids at university in Canada, and I can tell you they are doing PowerPoint presentation. And they're so serious there that my son in a business course had to present himself in a suit and tie, like a business meeting, to do the presentation. So also the choreography is there to make things serious, right? Okay, so let me ask one more question. What do you tell your students when you prepare them for these presentations? Do you give them instructions of where to stand? No. Okay, do you give them instruction, because all this information is online. If you go online, what I'm telling you now, you can buy books on how to give presentations also. It's all there. How many of you have seen your students produce content with everything written on there? How many of you have been to a collegio docenti where there's a presentation and everything is on there? Okay, so you know. All right. Well, first thing, here, I have notes here. They're not notes written in words. They're just key points because I'm a certain age. And I don't remember. I've done this hundreds of times in class, explained it, but I still don't remember. And if I don't have the passages, I might say, oh, I forgot that, right? So I keep that there. So the first thing, this is also not only about presentation. This is also about teaching. Your kids are not going to listen to you talk continuously for more than 20-minute blocks. After those first 20 minutes, you can stop teaching because they have stopped listening. And this would be good to keep in mind when you're teaching. It just doesn't exist that you do a lesson, a literature lesson, and you are talking for 40 minutes. You need to break that. If you have 60-minute slots, 50-minute slots, which is more or less the standard, you need to break that up. And either with questions, feedback, an activity, because they're not there. Again, we do this in class, yet when we sit in a collegio docenti, are we present for more than 20 minutes? No, we're not. We check out completely. Of course. So that's first thing, that's the technical aspect. 20 minutes is what's going to happen. Do any of you know the site TED Talks?
Yes. Yeah.
No? That's a good one to write down. TED.com. First of all, just a parenthesis in the presentation. It is an organization, non-profit, where experts from all fields give talks. And they're never longer than 20 minutes. Very often they're shorter, but they're never longer than 20 minutes. They have a timer in front of them when they're on stage. And they're good if you're teaching English because the TED Talk is on all subjects, all types of speakers, and also for updating your English, keeping it up. It has the possibility, not the new ones, they have to first translate or write down, they have to set them online. But if you go back maybe 6 months, you'll have the script of what the speaker says, but more importantly, on your computer, you listen to him and you click the word and he will repeat, it goes back to where he's saying it. So you can follow what the person is saying and then click where it is on the script and it goes right back. So you can listen and go back when you don't understand that part of the language where there's a word that you're saying, what is he or she saying? So that's a good site to use for your students and for feedback, okay? Rule number 1. It is impossible at a sensory level to read and listen. You can read and write, we all know that because we were all students. We all took notes while teachers, professors were speaking. But it's not possible to read and write. So every time that you see a presentation, I think of those collegi, where you have your nice POF written up there and then somebody's talking about it. It is completely useless. Okay? Completely useless. I either read or I listen to you. And obviously, listening is going to dominate the reading. So nobody's going to read your presentation. Your slides are useless at that point. So if you've had your students do a presentation for you, and this is what students like to do, because to do a presentation here, you're using images to fix the idea. This is why they're good for graphs, okay? And then why they use them in business, but also art history, or even English literature. You're making a point, you want them to remember the point, you choose the image. You choose the image after you've decided what you're going to talk about, okay? Not based on the image, the contrary. I want to say this, this, and this. I want them to go home with this idea. Let's see what image I can find to fix it for them. Okay. So that's one element that you have to make them understand. What they're going to do is try to write as much as possible, stand like this, and read it. But those are their notes. That's not the presentation. So here you're actually asking them to learn the content and then teach the content. And they have to move from the idea of interrogazione and the idea of teaching someone else something. And that's one point. Again, how many times have we seen presentations where the image isn't big enough for the room, it's too far? Again, this is another point that you would teach your students. Point 2, you have to make the image, and you have to make the image clear enough. So what you want to avoid, and everybody leaves. And what you want to avoid is for them to put in a lot of pictures, because they think, well, with a lot of pictures, there's more. It's not, okay? It has to be. It's confusing. You also have to help them understand the type of picture and the type of background. Just simple things that you see immediately looking at it. Writing with black letters on a red background doesn't help. It's awful. But until you are aware of what you want to do, you're not. Students just think, I'm going to make it as pretty as I can with all the special effects and forget about the impact on the viewer, on who's watching. Okay, so that's another one. Their choice of images and how they present it. This year, for example, I worked in a school. For the first time I have another school, and they only have 2 interactive boards in the institute, and one is in a classroom. And then they have 2 TVs fixed to a table with wheels, and I feel very much like an airline hostess as I push my trolley through the hallways of the school, and I'm easily recognizable because when I'm there I do all my classes like that. And they had to take into consideration that this is a TV and it's here and there's the back of the room, so their PowerPoint had to be huge, occupying the entire screen. It couldn't be small. So again, I always tell them, remember where your classmates sit, make sure that they can see it, make sure that the writing is clear, make sure it's not crowded with too many things, and that it suits what you want to say, basically. So again, the choice of image has to be important, and how they work that. This is one thing that I do. You may agree with it or not as teachers. I find that technologically they're not so savvy, okay? They hardly know how to use a Word document. They certainly don't know how to surf the net efficiently. That's our fault because we don't know, and we should give them where to go and not say, find it yourself. And they don't know how to use PowerPoint. Some yes, some don't. But mostly, they don't know how to save it, transfer it, use a USB. The PowerPoint program here is a different one from the one I have home. It's not responding and things like that. So I always, when I teach PowerPoint presentation, I teach the PowerPoint presentation. I model it, and then we do a round of practice. And with the practice, I ask my students to tell the person presenting what they did correctly, what was good about the presentation, and that comes first, the positive feedback, and then what needs work, and not what was bad, what needs work, okay? And this I already teach them immediately. So you get a lot more from someone with positive feedback, and the negative has to be encouraging, that there's possibility to improve, okay? And so they become aware of what they're doing, okay, with all of it, because until you see someone do it, and it's not easy. It is not easy to be here and to present to your classmates, and it's not easy to remember everything you have to do. But if they are doing at least one presentation in the 5 years they're at school, one a year, okay, then the part of presenting becomes natural, okay, it becomes a tool. So as a teacher, and this is my only bad moment where really I'm not flexible, is I say, if you have technical problems, or the day you present for an evaluation, come prepared. Don't tell me you have technical problems. You try it on this computer before. Don't come and tell me you forgot your USB, your sister used it and took it to school. Any excuse, I've heard them all. You consider it like you do for a job. You would never go to a presentation where you need to sell a product to prospective buyers or clients and not be prepared. I said, that's unacceptable.
Do you evaluate the students? Do you assess their presentation?
I do. In third year, I teach this in third year in a linguistico, and I teach them how to do it.
Yeah.
Actually, no, this year, it depends. I did it in a very good second year class, very dynamic second year class, linguistically, because I always think that in my first priority is the language. So I'm thinking, yes, I'm teaching them a skill, but at the same time, I'm giving them the opportunity to speak.
Sorry, before you have them do their presentation, do you have one lesson where you teach them how to do it?
Absolutely, the same way I'm doing it here. Okay. I'm modeling everything, apart from the
And do you
images.
show them examples of a good presentation?
Yes. And I show them, then they see it when their classmates go up. After the classmate does it, and I'll show you how the material I give for the first time, so you see what I do, because the first time I teach it, the content is not important. The content is super easy because they have to concentrate on how to do it. Then the third and fourth year, at the beginning of the year, I say, remember, you have to give me a presentation. Maybe fourth year, I say, choose a character from Shakespeare. Present this character for me, and then I sort of refresh their memory. Remember the body language, remember this and that. So after that, it should come natural, basically. Okay, that part. And so I am really, really strict on the day they present. Okay, really. If they come in, I'll give them a 3 for arriving without the material. I'll be a little. I also feel sorry for them because I'm not like that. It goes against me to do that. But really, I see my kids at university, they don't hand in their assignments at university. It's 10% off. Okay, off the mark. There are always consequences to what you do. And then,
That's the way they learn.
It's not to be mean, and I want them to solve their issues, because I tell them, I didn't grow up, I'm not a digital native, and yet I solve my problems, and you have to solve yours. You're younger, you're a digital native, I can say, I don't know how that program works. You can't. because you sound ignorant. And they will at university. It's very embarrassing. My daughter is allergic to that. She really doesn't like it. She's 20, and it's embarrassing for her. Okay, so
Absolutely.
kind of ignorance is terrible. All right, let's go to the part about paralinguistics. Okay, because here there's a big component of paralinguistics that you have to learn. First of all, the presentation is extremely different from the oral testing that you do here. They are two different things, completely opposite. The paralinguistics, the presentation, and the paralinguistics you use in the presentation should not be limited to the presentation. As teachers, this is an incredible tool. Talking to your students and capturing their attention. Okay. And I say this because for many years in the linguistico and turistico, I also did sostegno, which meant being in class with my colleagues. Yes, you're asking, why would she do sostegno? Ask the ministry. I have no idea. At a certain point, many years, they said yes, and I said, am I capable? Am I useful to you? Because certainly I don't have any qualification, and you know the situation. And so they would put me with an expert and with the languages, and these, help them with the French and with the German and that. And first year French and first year German, I can handle that. Second and third and fourth year, maybe French also. German, no. But the first levels and how to study. So I was in the sostegno. And sostegno is a wonderful experience for a teacher because you see how to do things, what works, and what doesn't. And very often I see teachers sitting down, talking to the class, and that's it. Yeah. And then you're in sostegno and you're completely ignored by your class because once you're in there after the first month, you're like a piece of furniture. So they behave normally without, holding back. And you can turn and look at them and their words, they're just not doing anything. And they're certainly not listening to you. All right. The results come from teachers who are standing, who are looking at their students in the eyes, who are calling on them, okay, who are interacting. Those are the teachers that have the attention. And it's simply because, well, first we know that when there is a physical body in front of you, and that body is in movement, that's going to sustain attention, okay? And in the same way, I'm modeling right now that body language. So when I'm teaching, I begin with the body. What do we do with our hands when we're presenting? Well, first of all, you certainly don't keep them in your pocket, which is something that is almost instinctive. I would love to put my hands in my pockets right now and talk to you like that, okay? You certainly don't cross your arms. You don't hold them back. What do you do with these hands? And it's interesting to watch your students because they have to concentrate on different things, right? And so these hands, they don't know. Well, you use your hands. And it's always amazing how I think Italians are going to do this naturally, and yet in front of an audience it disappears. It disappears, that natural way of talking. Okay. So your body, your hands, there are techniques to help your audience follow the subject. For example, if you're making points, okay, first, second, third point, you use with your hands. If you're indicating size, we want to say, well, like this, or, moving size, giving this movement. Our brains absorb these without being aware that we are absorbing this information, and it's fixing it, right? So your hands, you need to use them and not hold them steady. Secondly, your audience mirrors you. Okay? If you smile at your audience will smile back. which is pretty amazing when you're here, okay? That there is this connection with who you work with. And smiling isn't so difficult. It is the first time you do it because you have to smile. You try to make it natural. And it's easier to smile if you have control of the language because you can make a joke and then your audience smiles. We all know humor is, I think, is the last thing that you are able to express linguistically. Okay, one for cultural reasons, and the other is because it's just difficult to do. So if you can actually express humor, make a joke, and your audience sympathizes with you, and that's another thing. An audience doesn't want to see you uncomfortable. How many times have we watched programs where the person is just uncomfortable? In English we say squirming. To squirm is like a worm. It's that movement where you're in your body but you would like to not be in your body. And an audience doesn't like that, because if you're uncomfortable here, they have empathy for you. Your audience isn't there to see you suffer. It makes them uncomfortable because of this mimicking. Okay, so if you are that type of person, you have to learn how to hide it. There are some things that you have to learn how to hide and how to work with it. And this is why doing presentations is so important, because I think that, especially in Italian schools where these kids spend 5 years together, it is the safe place where to do this, rather than being thrown in at university or being thrown in your first job, your second job, without ever doing them. They're always difficult, but at least in this place, you're safe. The worst that can happen is you're going to get a so-so grade, okay? Nothing else. So, the body, the hands, the difficult part. Looking at your audience in the eyes. And here it's tricky. You have to look at your audience in the eyes, okay? Especially in a classroom. And it's easy in a classroom with our students. Well, I don't know. I find it easy. Do you find it easy?
Looking at
your students. I heard students joking about one of my colleagues once. She says when she talks, she looks at something up in the air. You know how students are? They notice all our quirks, all our strange things. And we think that we don't have any and nobody notices them, but in reality they see through you. And of course they all, they joke about it. And in this case they say, yeah, she's always looking at a point up. She never looks at us. Yeah. Okay? Think about yourself a moment. Where do you look when you talk to your students? Look at them. Yes. I think for teachers, at least after a while you become comfortable. Let me ask you this. What about when you take on a new class that is not a first year? Because first years, they're still little. What about when you enter a fourth or a fifth year, which is even worse because they're adults, and it's not your class and you get them for the first time? How do you feel that first day? I think I'm more nervous than they are. I can feel the sweat trickling down that first day, my back, because it's September, it's still hot, and still it just trickles down. Because we judge immediately. Before we even realize that we're judging, we've made a snap judgment. So the first impression is important, right? So it's important to come in and to smile. And I've had my own kids say, yeah, we met the new teacher. She didn't even say good morning. The poor woman was probably so worried about entering the class that she forgot. I say, have pity. You have no idea what it's like to be on the other side. Okay, so if they have problems looking at their audience in the eyes, tell them. Don't look at them in the eyes. Look at them at their nose. If I look at your nose, you won't know I'm looking at your nose. It will look like I'm looking in your eyes. Okay? But it helps a little bit to know that you don't, you can point at the nose and it will seem like it and it'll give you a sense of calm. So there is a trick about looking at them. What else? Movement. Movement depends on the amount of space. And let's talk a moment about the technical aspects, because presentations can be with a smart board, it can be with just a paper board. It doesn't have to be technological. Where they stand and how they demonstrate. So the important thing is not to lose connection with your audience. The moment you lose eye contact and connection with your audience, you're going to lose your audience. So their tendency, most of us, our tendency is to turn away because it's a defensive mechanism. So if I have this, I'm going to turn away because I feel safer. Again, you're forcing yourself to do this. You should know what's on the board, so you shouldn't have to look at it. You might point to something, okay, and then move back. They're so nervous that they will actually stand in front of the presentation. Now, when I'm teaching the presentation, the actual, we don't have the remote control to move the slides. Many of us have touch, which is wonderful because you're right here and you can just touch and change it. And very often, if the touch isn't working, I generally ask one of their classmates to be in command, and I say, just, make a movement. Tell them to change so that you are not turning, because you won't turn back. Okay, force yourself to do this. So that's also the technical aspect that they have to take into consideration. Obviously, the ideal would be to have your notes on your laptop. And again, they don't know that programs like, PowerPoint is one, and then you have Prezi, and then you have the one for Apple, which is called iNotes. All of these are already organized where you can put viewer program so that they see the image, but you on your laptop see the image and your notes below, and only you see your notes below. They don't know this, okay, that you have these programs, the latest version of these programs, that have this possibility. Okay, so if we are going to teach how to do PowerPoint presentations, we want to also give them some tools to use. And again, when you don't know and when you're searching and preparing to teach something, Mr. Google is very helpful. Just ask Mr. Google and he will always answer and give you everything from the latest recipe to whatever you need. Okay? And of course, obviously, in a PowerPoint presentation, it's your passion that comes through, okay? How you feel about the presentation. Obviously, if you're going to go into here and speak with a monotone and just pretend it's another oral test, your audience is going to be sleeping. And this is another part. Again, linguistically, it's really helpful. The intonation, how we use our voice. And it's a bit like the aspect of humor. It's not easy because you're doing it in another language. And I already know as American English, Americans will have different intonation. They'll emphasize differently than the British will. I think also Italians will emphasize differently. And you also emphasize different things. Okay, so if I say, oh, let's go to the cinema, or let's go to the cinema, these things mean different things. So it's not easy, but it's wonderful practice from the language perspective to use intonation, and it's really, really hard. I think it's as hard as asking someone to sing who never sings, right? To emphasize and use their voice. And it's always very satisfying when you find students who will do that. So I'm going to give you this, and you'll find all this material. It will be given to you digitally because I will load it, and then I have your emails. This is an evaluation sheet that I use, but for the first presentation, when I teach them how to do it, this is what I give them, all their classmates, to take into consideration when they are evaluating. So this is what my students generally see the first time we have a practice, and I want them to evaluate their classmates, and it's a practice run. So you have scores from 1 to 10, how you do it, physical performance, and they have to take into consideration body language, eye contact, hand gestures. Again, posture. Posture is important too, because you know, it's that age, they're embarrassed about everything. They'll come in, they'll close. Some of them close are, you know, curved naturally. You close into yourself. Even I have to think of myself as, you know, pulling back because I tend to curve. And it's a good idea to teach them this. You know, stand up, posture, because posture projects confidence, right? And again, they have to consider themselves actors in a role. And this is true in any presentation, and it is especially true in business, because if you're at work, you're not going to sell your ideas, you're not going to sell your product, you're not going to be convincing. Okay? And it's time to start, you know, trying to do this naturally as a practice. So posture, and that all has it. Nervous tics. Again, how many times you're sitting here, you know, listening to them. You've got the girls who's doing this, okay, and what else do they do? I don't know. They sway. There's this swaying, right? Or there's this, if they're sitting, they've got the leg thing going, all this. These are all things that I think we should be telling them, because they need to be aware of them. Because from today to tomorrow, they are not kids anymore, they are adults. And this is the same as little things that we do with language that they do mostly with language, like you have the choa, right? We have our version with like in English. Recently, my daughter went for a job interview for a summer job. She was interviewed 3 times for the job. And she said to me the first time, it's a new experience. She's mostly Italian, and now she's Canadian in the Canadian world. And so she's sitting and doing this conversation. After the first interview, she said, yeah, Mom, I answered yeah, and I could hear your voice and Zia's voice, because our relatives are in Italian. Zia's voice saying, stop saying yeah, one day you will be at a job interview, and that sounds so crass. Yeah, yes, you say yes. And she could actually catch herself. She could hear herself, or she could hear my voice. Yeah. Don't say it, but she caught herself. And the second interview, she already had the more confidence and more control, right? We're telling them, and it seems like it's not entering, but the moment they are in that position, it's going to come back, okay? Yes, so when they're there, these tics come out. And I tell them, you know, a lot of you sway. A lot of you do this. How many, you know, hold your arms, cross your legs, or everything. All kinds. And this comes out on the evaluation from their classmates. So what does he or she need to fix? And they, the tick, she's swinging her hair continuously, okay? Sometimes it's good also to film them. If you have an iPad, just turn it on, film them, and then say, look at yourself. This is what you're doing. This is what presenters do when they're presenting to big audiences. They don't go on cold. They will watch what they're doing, right? Because you really don't have much of an idea until you see it and you say, oh no, how many times did I do this or this? Okay, so this is also a good moment to make them aware of their nervous tics and mostly get them to control them. Because it's one thing that your mother tells you, stop chewing your lip, okay? It's another thing to actually be there and know that you have to stop it, okay? Pronunciation and intonation. Well, obviously in English or in any language that isn't your language, the pronunciation is going to be important, because if you're not pronouncing, it's not about pronouncing perfectly. It's about pronouncing words correctly, because if they're mispronounced, you're going to lose me, okay? Even the native speaker that's listening to you that knows English will not understand. So pronunciation and the intonation part, again, not easy. But with intonation, what I find is connected is how you present passion for the subject, okay? Because when I want you to really understand something, I just did it, really understand something, okay? I will emphasize that word, okay? So again, you can choose to take it into consideration. If I'm doing this as a practice and I'm teaching you, I will. If I were in your position where there is content involved, so you have a lot. You have all of this plus the content plus the evaluation you think you're going to get. Well, poor kids. I would sort of, use a different criteria maybe to help them. If their pronunciation is really bad, you need to say, okay, we don't understand you. That's like not doing a presentation. Right? You're not getting your message across. Clarity of expression and voice projection. And this part here, again, voice projection, and it's a huge problem because the shy kids will speak lowly, really lowly, and they won't project their voice. And it's difficult to believe because they're so loud in any other situation, and then they come here and you can hardly hear them. And I said, it's hard to believe, yeah. And again, that's connected to confidence, projecting your voice to the end of the room. And if you don't have that, the back of the room is not going to listen to you. Okay, it's the same thing as the image. They have to be able to hear, and they have to be able to see, and you have to make eye contact with the back of the room, not just the front. Okay. And clarity of expression. Well, how many of you, just think of your students, how many of you have, even the good students who speak English, you hear them and they're just going, well, I did this and I did that, and they speak so quickly without, proper pauses and a separation of the words. And again, I ask them, and I'll ask you, do you understand me? What is my speed like? Too fast? Do you understand it? No, honestly. Yes. Is the speed?
Yes. Maybe too slow.
But this is my natural speed.
Okay. No, I'm not offensive, but well, quite slow. Very, very clear. Absolutely clear, but yeah, quite slow.
Yeah, but this is
But perfect. I mean, for high school, for example, it's perfect. Even for my school, secondary first grade, it would be perfect. I am quite fast than you. I would like to be as you are.
well, this is my natural speed. I can't tell you if when I was younger and living in Canada, if I spoke more quickly. That I don't remember and I don't know. But this is my normal speed in when I speak, even when I am in Canada and my world becomes totally in English, and therefore after a couple of weeks I start sounding normal because the comments from my Canadian family is, you speak like a book. Okay? But because I don't remember the vocabulary, it's slower. If you're not living the language, even if you're the native speaker, you don't have the recall. Okay, so I'm there and I want to say a lot of things and I'm going, how do you say this? Okay.
Now, what I must fear is that if you, for example, imagine to be before 28, teenagers or, of about 12 years old, if you are so slow, you are led not to be able to take all of that under control.
Well, in this situation, when I'm teaching, I tend to go, I don't like the frontal lesson. I go for group work, and I want them to be speaking as much as possible and not to me. So this would be the explanation. So the speed, I require that they understand it.
If I were you, I would, I'm used to move all around in the class.
Absolutely.
To take everybody under control.
Absolutely.
And at the same time, I look at them, in the eyes, but at the same time, I move among them.
Yes, and I agree. It's not the front.
Instead of staying just at the board and the point.
No, and that's true. It depends if you are mostly doing frontal lessons.
Different between high school and secondary school.
True, and very often, to tell you the truth, in a high school, we don't even have the space with their sats. Most of us teacher in the high school, you risk killing yourself trying to get over their bags and try. But again, when there is group work in your monitoring, yes, you're going around. If I'm explaining how I want something done, then I would be here. And but this is the way I normally speak. It's not any faster. And it's the same also if I speak in Italian. I'm not any faster. I possibly a slow speaker, but I don't generally get the feedback that people don't understand. Okay, rarely.
Not even boring.
And it
too fast, you can misunderstand it.
Yes, and also the thing is, it's funny, but it's not connected up to how well you know the language, because sometimes they don't know it that well, and there's just speed talking. So we're saying no speed talking. Speed of delivery, you have too fast, too slow, obviously. Grammatical accuracy, and then the slides. How effective were your slides and that. Okay, so
One question, sorry. Does any of these items has more importance, or do you evaluate?
I evaluate, grammatical accuracy. From my perspective as the conversation teacher, I take the way I do this from how Cambridge does the certifications, because I've done certifications for 30 years. Cambridge is never about accuracy. To pass the exam, you don't have to know the grammar perfectly. Communication in another language is never about precision. Obviously, the fewer mistakes you make, the better it is, the higher it are. But for communication, that's not what it's about. So if you write a letter and you make mistakes, as long as those mistakes are not compromising, and that's the key word in the certification, they don't compromise communication, then that's fine. Your listener or your reader in the exam would understand, okay? So it's the same thing that the way I do it for grammar. Okay, so you got a verb wrong. Did I understand what verb you were using? Yes. Did it compromise? Did we all understand? Yes. So that's not going to happen. Obviously, if you don't know your irregular verbs and you make a lot of mistakes, yes, you're going to be penalized. You should know your irregular verbs. Is that terrible S that you keep forgetting? So yes, it's systematic. This is the perfect time to practice that, because when they do their practices, when they do it for an evaluation, I don't interfere. I don't say anything. I let them do it. When we're practicing, I will always say, And so they know they're forgetting the S, okay? So these are up to you. Maybe you've been working on the S and you want them to use it. You might want to.
But I mean, generally speaking, well, I mean, the slides are very important because that's where the message is. So they have to make the message come through.
Yes.
So
Generally.
this is, I mean,
Yes.
I would give the slides a lot
Yeah.
of importance.
Yes.
But
they also-
physical, the body language is very important, but they have to deliver a message to the class.
That's right. And very often they tend to underestimate the slides. They just go on Google and they say, oh,
Yeah.
here it is, it's due tomorrow,
Yeah, it's-
here, and they put it in. And the slides are often meaningless. And at the same time, they forget to move the slides over. So they're talking. Like I said, there are a lot of things that they have to take into consideration. So it's not easy to do this presentation. It's very complex. And that's why, but you know, you teach it in second or third, depending on your class. And you keep the content the first time very, very simple. So the first one I do, and I'll show you now. I give them about not more than a 4-minute presentation. That's as long as I want the presentation the first time they do it. Okay? 4 minutes, no more than 3 or 4 slides. It's not about the content, it's about how you do it. It's all about how you do it. And so I send them to this site. It's called Disney Wiki, and it has these characters. And I say, choose a cartoon character. Even if it's not a Disney character, many of them do comics or superheroes. I don't care. But this is a good starting point. And I say, choose. You've got heroes, heroines, and let's see. We'll do, I don't know, Aladdin.
So 1 minute that slide, right?
No, it does. I don't do it like that. I say you might want to say something more or something less on it. I don't time it. You have to know that you're going to speak for 4 minutes. So when you are at home, those 4 minutes and the slides, because your introduction might be longer, okay, or shorter. So just try to think of the presentations that your kids have done and how you would want them to structure it. And so here's one. I say, don't ignore everything because there's his life story, you know, his full biography. And I ask them, I want you to tell the audience why you chose this character as your introduction. There's a reason, okay? And then say something about his qualities. And this, the reason I say that, because here, where is it? Personality. You go down, I say you'll find a part on personality. Okay, right here, you can read it. Might be a little difficult for them. However, and here is, they'll find all these adjectives. And I said, again, don't bring me a shopping list of adjectives. Okay, just give me a few. And to the adjective, give an example. So if you're going to say he's helpful, okay, tell me an example from the cartoon that, you know, shows that he's helpful. Aladdin is very helpful. In fact, in this situation, he did this for Jasmine. Okay, just a few things. The image of where he's stealing bananas or whatever, I don't remember. It's been a long time. And he gives them to whoever, the poor people in the street or something, like a Robin Hood, right? So the image of, and of course at this point, he has explained that he's also a thief, right? And here is something that I do because of the English. This is where the presentation crosses over to language learning. You're speaking to an audience that, yes, understands English, but remember what I said at the beginning. Your presentation is to inform, to teach, to sell, to motivate. Inform and teach are the same. To teach, to motivate, or to sell. So here we are teaching, right? So this is what I allow them to do. If you're going to introduce a new word, trustworthy. They don't know trustworthy in third year. Trustworthy, but it's a good word to have, okay? Then I'm going to allow you to put the word written on it, nice and big, okay? And then explain trustworthy to your audience. So you're going to say, well, Aladdin is trustworthy and means that you can depend on him, okay? So I said, because yes, it's a PowerPoint presentation, but in this case, you're teaching the class something. And in this case, because we're learning English, teach them some English. Let's make this useful for everybody, not just about the presentation. So I give them this site, and they prepare it, and then they come and do it. And it's a total disaster the first time, because everything you have said has fallen on deaf ears. Do you know the expression? It has fallen on deaf ears. And until you're actually here,